All right, I am going to make a leg rig, just like a simple leg rig, but it's going to be able to switch between FK, between IK. It's going to be able to stretch, and it's going to have some tweak bones so that it wiggles. First, I need a leg, so I'm just going to add in a cube real quick and model something quickly. We're going to be using a few different sets of bones, so let's just add in an armature, single bone. I'm going to go over to whatever, the little running person. Under viewport display, want to turn on in front so we can actually see it, and I'll turn on the axes also just so you can tell which way they're pointed. All right, in edit mode, let's just rotate this 180, make sure that the roll is set to 0, and this is just going to be the hip bone, just like the very top. It's not really going to do anything other than have something for everything to be parented to. So we'll right click this, subdivide it, and this is going to be for the knee. It's not a bad idea to name all of these, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to keep track of them in the bone collections over here. And these ones I'm going to name ORG for like original, the bones that you would expect a leg to have basically. And I want all of these to not be deforming bones. We're going to make a different set of bones that are used for deforming. So with all of these selected, I'm going to hold Alt and click this button, and that should make it so all of them are turned off like that. You have to make sure you hold Alt when you click that. All right, so now let's just select all these bones right here. You can leave the hip bone, I believe. Let's Shift D to duplicate. So we have these, but I right clicked, so they're back in the same spot. Let's create a new bone collection and assign them to here. You can see that little dot, that means they're assigned. The selected bones are assigned here, but they're also assigned here still. So select that, remove it from there. And now we have like two different sets of bones that we can switch between. The way I like to be able to see all of them, because if you're looking at both of them, they're just like the same size, they're completely overlapping. The way I like to see them more easily is changing this from octahedral to B-bone right here. So these are supposed to be used for bendy bones, but the thing I like about them is that you can change the radius of them. So let's just look at these new bones we made. I'm going to select them all. I actually have this bound already to Q, scale B-bone, but you can also access it, I think, in the bone properties, bendy bones. You have this display size right here, and there's also scale B-bone right here under armature, transform, scale B-bone. And I think there might be another one, Control Shift S. Nope, that's something else. Alt Shift S. I don't remember what it is, but anyway, I put it in my quick favorites so you can just scale it down. And now if I open up both of them and go into X-ray mode, you can actually see both sets. So this is how I like to, view them. You can also just scale those on like just one axis. So these ones are going to be our deforming bones. I'll name that DEF for deforming. With all these selected, you want to make sure you hold Alt and press this. So now they are all set as deforming bones. So when we go to weight paint, or automatically do the weight paints, because I'm not really going to do weight paint. These are the ones that are actually going to deform the model. But remember I said we want to make it all wiggly. So we actually want the deforming bones to be a little different. You can just select these two right here and subdivide them. So now we have a few extra bones like that. And eventually we'll put controllers here so we can make the leg be shaped like that, or however we want, basically. Okay, next we need a separate set for IK. So I'm just going to view only the original bones right here, and I'm going to duplicate them, and then we're gonna hide it, or no, we're gonna make a new collection. This will be called, and then we assign it here, and also remove from here. Oh, we need to have an active selection right here. So I will assign here and remove from here. Let's make sure everything is actually working properly. You can also use the star to solo right here, this little star, and this is the deforming. Okay, so IK, I'll just make a little skinnier also with these selected. I'm just gonna press Q, but remember I showed you how to do that under transform, scale B-bone. You can right click it, add it to your favorites right here if you wanna also press Q. So I'll just scale it down, but not as skinny, so we can actually see all of them at the same time if we want to. We can set this up pretty easily. Actually, before we do any of that, let's set this so it's actually deforming, so we can actually see what's going on. So back in object mode up here, I just did that with Control Tab. Let's select this, Shift select this, Control P, and use with automatic weights. Now, again, in object mode, select the actual leg model. And I usually like to move the armature to be above the subdivision. So basically it's deforming it when it looks like this, and then it's smoothing it out instead of trying to deform it, after it's subdivided. That usually makes it look a little smoother. Let's just test this out to make sure it works. So yeah, we have a typical just normal FK rig, which means you rotate the parent bone and all of the children rotate with it. And if you want to pose it, you have to do it like this. So it works as expected, but we're eventually going to switch between a bunch of different types of rotation and stuff. Let's set up the IK. None of these should be deforming, and it looks like they aren't. Okay, so for IK, we need a few bones. Let's just select right here, extrude on the Y. This is going to be our target. Alt P, clear the parent, move it in the front. I'll Shift D to duplicate right here. I'll hold Shift and change the length a little. And I'll also press Q, scale it down just so we can see it a little better. This is going to be our IK bone that's like controlling our foot. Alt P to clear the parent. And I'm actually just going to parent this to, I'll select this one, hide it with H, just so it's easier to select. Select this one, Shift select this one, Control P, keep offset. So now this bone is connected to the one that I'm moving. All right, in pose mode, we select this bone right here, Shift select this bone, Shift I believe, to add IK, and that should make it so that this bone is always going to point at this one, but you can see that it's like moving too much. We only want it to move these two bones. So let's select this, go over to bone constraints. Shift I is just a shortcut to add the IK bone constraint, which is right here. So you could do that manually if you want, but it automatically fills in these things when you do it the way that I showed you. So what we want is chain length. So right now it's 0, which just means it's going to go as far as it can. We can change this to 1, so it's only moving, this single bone, or we can change it to 2 to move the 2 that we actually want to move. Another thing that I like to do, and this is optional, is I want the feet to like follow this bone. So when I rotate it, the foot rotates with it. It's pretty easy. All you have to do is select this bone, Shift select this bone. We're going to add another bone constraint. The shortcut is Control Shift C, and then you can copy rotation. So now this bone that is green is going to always match the rotation of this IK bone right here. So just to make this a little easier to reference things, I'm going to name this one just IK. We're only doing one leg, so we don't need to worry about left and right and stuff. And this one is going to be called target. And this is going to help us position the knee, because right now the knee would be like going backwards. So let's select this, choose the pull target. You have to choose the armature first, and then it will let you select the bone. And this one, we can just search for it now. It's called target. If it doesn't bend at all, this happens sometimes when these bones are completely straight. Basically, all you have to do is select this joint and just move it towards the knee, just like a tiny little bit, so it's not completely straight. So you can just move it like, I barely moved it, but I did move it. And now let's move this one, and it is bending, but it's bending in the wrong direction. Usually that just means you have to change the pole angle. It looks like we have to change it to -90 for it to point in the right direction. This is also all dependent on the like bone roll and stuff, which you can change up here. So probably if you have it so that the X is pointing this way, then it'll probably work fine. I don't know. All you need to know is that you change the pole angle, and that's how you get it to rotate towards the correct location. I don't really need this bone or this bone right here, and I don't really need this bone. They're not going to be doing anything special. So I'm actually going to delete them. I hid the bone earlier, so it's not there. I can unhide it with Alt H, or I guess reveal it. Select that. Let's just delete that and delete this one. We'll actually just make it so this is changing the deforming bones. So we'll show the deforming bones right here. We can make it, or go back into pose mode. Let's make this one a little thicker so we can see it better now. This is the one we're going to be controlling the foot with. So yeah, we want this one to match the rotation. So select this. This is the one that it's copying the rotation of. And then second, select this one, Control Shift C, copy rotation. So now this should actually be deforming it, but when we move it, it's not going to copy the location yet. We'll work on that after. We have our IK, we have our deforming bones, we have our original. Now we need our tweak bones. So the way the tweak bones work is we're basically going to add a little bone at the tip of each of these. And I'm going to not do the foot. I'm just going to do it for right here, 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 and here. So I believe, let's see, if I have to be in edit mode. If we extrude, I'm just doing this off the fly, off my head, on the fly. I'm doing this like a fly is on my head. Okay, so let's select all of these, E to extrude, Y, and just push it out a little bit. And for each of these, clear the parent like this. We don't want them to be parented to anything right now. We will set the parents later. And if we want these to be like a very specific length, you can change this right here. Just make sure you hold Alt first, and you can hold Shift also to make it, you know, move smaller. I'll set it to 0.1. So 0.1, hold Alt and press Enter. And they're all 0.1 now. All right, so with all of these selected, let's add them to a new bone collection called tweak. Yeah, and then assign, make sure they aren't assigned from here, remove that. We have just our tweak bones right here. All right, so we have all the bones we need, I believe, and now we just need to parent them up and set constraints and stuff. So let's bring our IK and our tweak over here. And I'm going to parent this to this bone right here. So when we move in pose mode, when we move this, you can see that that tweak bone is actually following it. And then, so back in edit mode, let's select this. Do the same thing right here. Let's do the same thing right here. Control P, keep offset. Control P, keep offset. Okay, so now in pose mode, all of these should be following correctly. Now we want to make it so that our actual deforming bones are following our tweak bones. So the way we do this is you have to do this in pose mode to like set the bone constraints, and you want to make sure that you're always using the constraints with the actual picture of the bone on it and not this one, because it's easy to kind of mix them up, but they have different uses and stuff. We're going to be using stretch to constraints. So select the bone that you want it to stretch to, the target, and then shift select this one, control shift C, stretch to. So now this bone is stretching to that one. So we're just going to go down the line, select this one, stretch to, select this one, and then that one, control shift C, stretch to. You can see it's starting to come together. Then this one, that one, control shift C, stretch to. Okay, so now we should be able to go just turn on our tweak, and it's looking okay. And you can see it's still not stretching. This is an IK setting that we have to turn on. And I'll show you why we set up all of these bones right here, because Blender doesn't make it easy for us, unfortunately. Let's go to bone properties. Then there is inverse kinematics. There's this option right here already called IK stretch. You would think this would work the way that you want it to, but when you turn it up, you can see it's also, this bone is getting thicker, and it's actually scaling the leg up in a weird way. Yeah, let's just select both of these bones. I'm gonna turn this to 0.1, hold Alt and press Enter. So that way it's actually affecting both of these bones. If these two bones right here, let me turn this off so you can see a little better. If these two bones right here were actually set to deform, because remember they're not, this would be making the legs scale up and like get fat. It would be looking like this, basically. I'll scale all of these up. It would be doing this right now. But the way the stretch to constraints work is it will actually limit the volume. It'll maintain the volume right here by default. So it is actually making it stretch the way you would expect with like normal squash and stretch stuff. And the reason, excuse me, and the reason behind only turning this up to 0.1, if you turn it up too high, there are some weird errors. I'll try to show you basically. So it makes it so, yeah, you can see if you turn it up too high, the leg just doesn't bend anymore, and it's just always stretching when you want it to kind of buckle and have the knee move. So you set it to something pretty low. I usually just set it to 0.1. This will make it so at a certain point you can't bend it anymore. Let's see where the limit is. Yeah, right about here. So at a certain point it will kind of stop bending, but I'm not really worried about that. Another thing we can do if you don't want the foot to scale up at all, you can, let's see, select, first of all, we need to make sure that it's the deforming bone that we're selecting. So make sure that you're in the deforming section. This is actually turned on. Under, yeah, this bone properties, go to relations. You can see inherit scale. You can just set this to none. Basically, it's asking how you want it to inherit the scale from its parent. So right now this is parented to this bone. So if this bone scales up, let's see, if this bone scales up, it's not going to scale this one. Let's just see when it's set to full, it will scale it up. So I usually just turn this off. And if you don't want it to get like messed up, I'll usually make it so it's copying the scale of a different bone. So if you have a root bone for your rig or whatever that just controls everything, you can parent it, or you can make it inherit the scale of that. This is pretty easy. You just do this with a bone constraint, copy scale. If you want, you could make it so it copies the scale of, let's just turn on. Yeah, I don't know why this is here. This should be moved to the original. So I'll select that. Or actually, no, let's leave it here because we're gonna end up seeing the IK bones the most, probably. Anyway, I'll select this, shift select this, control C, copy scale. And now if we scale this one up, it will also scale the foot, just to show that you can do that. All right, and to show that the tweak bones actually do work, this is this is what it's doing right now. Because remember, our deforming bones are stretching to our tweak bones right here. These all have stretch to constraints. And then our tweak bones are following the IK bones. So when we move the IK bones, they are following it. So now our deform bones are following our IK bones. I'll reorder it. So we have our deforming bones are following the tweak bones are following the IK bones. So now we have kind of a normal looking leg, but we also have the ability to, make it wiggly if we want. We can make it like S-shaped like that. Okay, so if we want to actually switch between all of these, you can do that. The main idea behind this would be making two sets of bones, one for IK, one for FK. So, and then making it so that the deforming bones are using like child of constraints or something like that, and changing which bones it's following. So do you want it to follow the FK bones, or do you want it to follow the IK bones? Another way you can do this is literally just by turning off the IK right here, which is usually what I do because it's less convoluted. You don't have to make a separate set of bones. That's what the original bones would be for, is so you have you could just rename this FK really if you want, because that's what it's going to end up being. You have your FK and your IK bones right here, and then your deforming bones are just going to either copy the transforms of these or copy the transforms of these. I don't really want to do that. So, but that is how you would do it. I usually will just come over here, select this yellow bone, and turn the influence off like that. So it's basically making it so it's just turning it into a regular FK rig, I guess. But this is still being used for foot rotation, which is a thing you can also turn off, that you can turn off in the deforming bones like this. Copy rotation. You could make it turn off at the same time. So I guess let's just to show how to kind of put this all together using drivers or something like that. Let's just make a new bone, and we'll make that be like the on-off switch for between IK and FK, because this is the way I prefer to do it. Okay, so let's turn this on. Let's go back into edit mode. We'll just add this to the IK section. Normally what I would do, instead of having all of these would kind of be like in a folder. You can make a folder by just like dragging them onto each other like that, or like a drop down, whatever you want to call it. It's the same idea as a folder. And then I would just make like a separate collection for like the most commonly used controls, and everything else would be hidden. So I would usually put a driver just in like the control spot. But this is going to be our IK-FK switch. I'll just call it switch. And this doesn't need to be deforming, so let's get rid of that. And we're gonna make it so that, let's make it so that this bone moves like this way on the y-axis. All right, so let's select the IK bone, come over here. We're gonna put a driver on the influence, add a driver, and we want to select the armature and then select the bone that's called switch. And this is going to move in the local space, because in world space it would be like up here somewhere. In pose space or local space, it's basically, if you press Alt G to clear the location like that, its rest position is 0, so it's however far it moves from this spot. That's what local space means. So let's select this again, edit driver. So this is local space, and the Y axis right here, Y location. So now if we move this, it should be, let's see, I think there's something being added in here. I did see that. So let's just turn this off. So this is 0, and if I move it forward, oh, why is that the Z? Oh, because this is rotated, it's moving in that direction. We can just change this so this is moving on the, well, let's rotate it actually. I'll rotate it -90, and we'll change this to the local X axis. Edit local X location. Okay, so now this is actually working. And if you want it to be able to, like, you only have to move it a little to switch it. Basically, you can just multiply this. If you move it, let's see, like 0.1 or 0.2, what do you have to multiply this to turn it into 1? You could multiply 0.2 by 5. So it's the same thing that you do in here. The var right here is just the driver value. It's just a variable that it uses by default. You can change the variable name right here. So we have let's see, multiply this by 5, and now it's 1. So you have the actual value of the bone right here, the location of it, and then the driver value up here. So you can kind of use this to test it, and it's never really going to go past 1. Another thing you can do is put a limit. Well, you can make it so you can't rotate it at all or scale it. So we try to do that. It just doesn't work. I just locked that right here. But you can also make it so it like stops at a certain point with a limit location right here. You can tell it to, well, if you have the minimum and maximum set to 0, it's not gonna, well, let's change this to local space. It's not going to move at all. It's going to stay in that spot, but we can change the maximum to 0.2, and now it'll snap to that spot. You can see the value keeps going up. That's what effect transform changes. We move it back here. It makes it so that the actual value right here stops at 0.2, even if you push it further. So yeah, that's how you would do it. I'm actually gonna scale this down just to, make it a little easier to look at. Another thing about drivers, you might want it so that it's like on by default. A way to do that would be to come in here. You basically just want it to, instead of going from 0 to 1, you make it go from 1 to 0. Let's just put these in parentheses, and we'll just do 1 minus like that. And now when this would equal 1, it's 1 minus 1, which is 0. And then when it's 0, it's 1 minus 0, which is 1. So just putting, if you have values that go from 0 to 1 and you just want to flip them, you can put 1 minus in the beginning, and that flips it for you. I said we also wanted to change this rotation, so we can literally just copy, where is it? We can copy this, copy driver. Let's open up, I believe, the deforming bones right here, because this is where that copy rotation is, and we can paste that right here. So right now it's copying, but as soon as we turn it off, it no longer is copying right here, and then you can move it, however you want. Just to show you, I guess, how I would set it up for the control bones, I'll just make a separate one called control, and I can just go through and kind of choose the ones that I want to see. So I want all of the tweak bones. I want all of those. I would want these two bones and the foot bones, this bone, that bone, and I can assign that, and then I can just solo this, and this is all that I would see. So this one is only really going to be used when it's in FK mode. If we turn this off, these aren't really being used for much unless you want to use the toe. If you want a more complex foot rig that has like good pivot points and stuff, I have a video about that. It's a little older, but it's all the same concepts, and you can use that and it should work fine. This is like all the bones I would really want to use. You want to, move the knee, you just move it like that. You have these tweaks, which are very fun if you ask me. All right, let's make a funny animation with a wiggly leg. So on keyframe 0, it's going to pull these 3 tweak bones forward, insert a key. On 20, let's pull this back. And then on 40, I'm just going to duplicate this and bring it over to 40. So it's going like that. Now, if we want this to loop, let's select all these bones with A, select all of these and press Shift E, make cyclic, and now it's looping. So this isn't wiggly enough. Let's select just these 2 bones. I'm going to press G and then 5 to offset them by 5 frames. Let's select this, do the same thing, G5. So now we have a wiggly leg. And as we move this, it will be able to kind of follow it and offset like that, which is interesting. And because we're using the stretch 2, we can also stretch it and have it get kind of wild. But yeah, if you want a different result with this, like you could offset this by even more. Offset it by another 5, offset this by another 5. Oop, did I do this wrong? Offset this by another 5, and then offset this by 5. And it'll be like a tighter, like more frequent wave. But yeah, you got FK, tweak bones, and stretchy stuff. That's like, I don't know what else you would want really. You could add even more tweak bones if you want more than this many. You totally could if you want, just by like subdividing this more. But if I was to do it now, you would have to redo the automatic weights, which is fine. You can also turn these into bendy bones. So with these selected, turn this into bendy bones. This will give the illusion that it has more bones basically by not having the fall off be as sharp. When you turn this up, by the way, hold Alt again to affect all of them. So just turn all of them up to like 10 or whatever. And then you have this like squiggly leg. I don't know. I think it's pretty fun. Stretchy limbs are fun. I guess that's it. I hope this wasn't too confusing and convoluted. Maybe watch it a few times. Do it along with it, save the file, and reference it when you need to. Make sure you keep things organized like this so that you don't have a bunch of bones just piled on top of each other. And yeah, have a good one.